Welcome to Specifically About Quality, the podcast by Qualitywise, where we explore the principles, practices, and challenges of modern quality management. We will discuss key concepts, share real-world examples, and bring clarity to the complexities of quality management. In each episode, we provide insights for quality managers and professionals, helping you lead with confidence, ensure compliance, and drive continuous improvement. This podcast is here to support your work and your impact. Clear, focused, practical. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to Specifically About Quality, the podcast where we explore how to drive real quality improvements in manufacturing. I'm Agata Lewkowska, quality management system expert with years of experience in the automotive industry. This podcast is hosted together with Christopher Scott.
And I'm Christopher Scott, an expert in quality assurance and operational excellence in the automotive industry as well. Thank you for your interest in previous episodes of our Qualitywise podcast, specifically about quality. We're reading all your comments and are here to answer your doubts. Let's start. And today's topic is one that every quality professional will recognize: managing special characteristics without losing your mind.
I like the topic. Chris, you called it really specifically. Yes, so whether you're working in design, production, or auditing, special characteristics are everywhere. Those mostly graphic symbols and drawings, DFMEAs, PFMEAs, and the challenge is managing them effectively without turning it into a bureaucratic nightmare.
So why special characteristics matter? Let's take a step back. Why do we even care about special characteristics? Well, it comes down to risk. These are the characteristics where failure could seriously impact safety, legal compliance like regulation or function.
And remember, in IATF 16949, there is a strong expectation that organizations will identify, manage, and monitor special characteristics across product design and manufacturing.
Yes, but because people ask, do I really need to make such a big deal about a tiny dimension? Well, that depends. You need to understand the potential failure mode and its effects. A 0.1 millimeter tolerance could make or break a seal, for example, or it could be just noise. Maybe to give an example, in automotive, if that was a brake caliper on a vehicle, if that was out of tolerance by even 10 microns, that could be the difference between a brake failure and then a product recall.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's about risk-based thinking. We're coming back to this quite important approach. Thank you, Chris, that you mentioned about the three categories of special characteristics, because it is really important to remind ourselves that we have three categories connected to safety, statutory and regulatory requirements, and function, performance, durability, mountability. And that's why today we are talking about all of them, yes? And you will hear if some of them are more important or less important, but I hope you will have your own impression how to categorize those three already defined by IATF aspects of identifying special characteristics.
Now, some common pitfalls. Agata, let's get practical. What are some common mistakes when you see managing special characteristics in your experience?
First thing is that no one likes special characteristics. This must be stated. Yes, they are difficult because they cost more work, more attention. As we said, IATF identify, manage, and monitor requirements are quite strict. Yes, there's even certain point clause in IATF 8333 dedicated to special characteristics. But let me start from the very beginning. Yes, that first mistake is that some organizations may say, I don't have any SC, yes, special characteristic. But now I would like to remind you that IATF is prepared for such statements. And we have frequently asked questions. And here I would like to refer to one dedicated to the point connected with product safety simply. And here many organizations focus on the statutory regulatory requirements of the product and do not believe they have product safety related manufacturing product or processes. Is it true? So let me just emphasize that even if you think that you don't have such production which is connected to statutory and regulatory requirements, you are always obliged to produce a safe product. Your product is not connected with the assurance of the safety, but what if your product is working in the system which at the end is responsible for assuring safety? Yes. So this is the question which actually this FIQ helps you to make aware and start concluding from this question if really this case is at your organization. Yes, it's easy when we have information from our customer. What is the application of our product? Sometimes, especially when we are tier N, it's difficult even to imagine how my product can be applied. Yes. So at least in this area of possibilities you have, try to think, try to ask customer, what is the application of your product?
Right. And then you have failure mode effect analysis, the different types. Special characteristics are not assigned with real analysis. So this is because some organizations are scared of having the responsibility to control with higher attention special characteristics. Then they might try to mitigate or impact connected or severity or score lower. So we've said previously in other podcasts, and even in your experience, some organizations deliberately manipulate the result because they don't want the output to say that this end result, this severity index, is a 9 or a 10, which means that's related to safety, if we talk about the FMEA. And of course, such situation is impossible for severity. So like I said, if you've got a 9 or a 10, it's straightforward. If it's between a 7 and an 8, is that regulatory or is it a pass-through characteristic? We'll talk about more in the podcast as we go on.
Let me also indicate here the manual from a VDA KMC organization dedicated to special characteristics. And one of the common pitfalls can be connected to the designation of special characteristics. This manual actually will help you to understand if I really need to designate a special characteristic. This manual can be very valuable for the organizations which are responsible for designing, the product itself. However, based on this, let me tell you that there are different concept filters applied in this manual, which can indicate you if you really have to designate special characteristic, if you applied specific, I will call it error-proofing solutions. Yes, for instance, non-flammable material, if we know that there is a risk of flammability. Yes, this may result simply in this that you will not have special characteristic. Another common pitfall is that the drawing shows a special characteristic, but no one cascaded this information, so it is not reflected in the control plan or work instructions, and even FMEA. I forgot to mention at the very beginning. This is classic, really. Another low-hanging fruit during the audit. Be careful about this.
I've seen that too, and that's why communication flow is key. So we can now ask the question, shall we mark our workstation, where a special characteristic is produced or controlled? Now, there is no QMS external requirements like IATF. However, I think it's important to pay attention depending on your customer-specific requirements. And within your own organization, what does your own organization say within your group standards or your central standards? Another aspect is awareness of the people you work with special characteristics and aware of the consequences of not meeting those requirements. And to expand upon that, I recently worked with a tier 1 supplier where their FMEA had special characteristics everywhere. Their drawings had them. Their internal procedures were really clear and they were aligned actually to the VDA as well as the Daimler way of working, which was really good. However, their mindset was that they don't create special characteristics, so there's no need to put that in their control plan. Only the customer wants. And also, they didn't label the workstations with those special characteristics. If they worked with a very well-known Japanese OEM, the Japanese OEM and their partners within that group mandate their suppliers to label their workstations with special characteristics in their symbols, as well as operators that handle or touch components or make components that control special characteristics must have a special training program, and they must be quality assured and regularly trained and assessed. So it all depends on your customer requirements. And just because one customer is doing it and the other one isn't, you have to go off the worst case, not the best case, which means you have to go off the strictest requirement, not the weakest requirement.
So this is again connected to the awareness of the people, yes, that they are working with special characteristics and they have to pay attention, especially in case of not meeting the requirements and what will be the consequences. Okay, so now maybe the positive part. How can we manage special characteristics? I will use your words, Chris, without losing your mind.
Yeah, so imagine a brake caliper designer uses a lot in our webinars, in our teaching, and our training with our clients and customers. The engineering team identifies that a certain bore diameter is critical to brake performance. So in the DFMEA, it gets a very high severity rating. So if the bore size is too big, you're going to get some sort of leakage or you're going to get a poor brake performance, which means the brakes won't work properly.
Next step, the PFMEA is, so we evaluate process risks for the bore, let's say potential tool wear, and for all the toolings which are under work conditions, generally I have on my mind the only one solution, SPC. Yes, so based on that, we assigned process controls, maybe an automatic bore gauge with SPC limits, and an escalation plan if trends drift.
Yeah, and that characteristic gets specific graphical marking in the control plan. And that characteristic gets specific graphical marking or illustrations in the control plan and the operator instructions like the SOPs or standard operating procedures. And this is with visual cues to ensure consistent handling of the product.
So you see, this is also connected to meeting the quality management system requirements, yes, in terms of marking in specific documents, which are, let's say, co-working together. So when people ask, how do I avoid drowning in data? The key is, I would say, stratification, yes? Not all special characteristics needs the same level of control. You may apply different methods, not always 100% control or statistical process control. However, these are, I would say, the best methods, especially if we are talking about safety and statutory and regulatory requirements. But also, what's more, you can apply, these are line process audits to verify how is the awareness, how people are meeting the requirements which are in the working instructions. What are the escalation triggers? And sample-based monitoring where appropriate.
And that's correct, because when we think about it more, and we keep saying this in podcasts, and get cross-functional alignment, cross-functional, cross-departmental is really important. So don't just do it in a silo of a quality department who know and facilitate these type of activities. Work with production, maintenance, and metrology, the people who help you with your measurement.
These metrology people are quite interesting here, why we are saying about them, because they can help you to define the control method for the special characteristics. Let's pay attention that in many cases, you need to keep process capability on a certain level. So based on this, metrologists can help you, or designers even, this maybe is one step before, to design specific tolerances, yes, and also apply specific method, how we'd like to measure, control this specific special characteristic. Yes, that's why we are mentioning here about metrology. Not everyone is understanding this, but we need to really thought it out how later we will apply specific strategy for working with special characteristics. That's why people maybe don't like the special characteristics, and maybe this is the reason, yes, because as you see, you need to keep this level, which was at the very beginning, agreed with the customer and even proved while doing PPAP simply. Okay, so I would like to add one more dimension here to our discussion, the culture. I don't know if there are maybe already some people who don't like when we talk about the culture because this is something intangible and sometimes difficult, or maybe you're frustrated that in your organization this culture is not working like you would expect to support quality. However, organizations with a healthy quality culture treat special characteristics as a very important quality aspect to meet the requirements simply, yes. And they train their production teams to really understand why these features mattered, not just inspected blindly. And now I have on my mind one very good example of my experience while auditing. There was a production with many special characteristics connected to welding. And that's why during the audit, I need to take that strategy to really be convinced that people are aware what are these graphics in the working instruction and what would happen if they will not meet the requirements, yes? Luckily here, there was a big awareness, no issues. I really like working with such organization. I'm quite convinced that later the end users of the vehicles have better sleep. So it will definitely pay off to this organization.
Absolutely. And to add to that as an example, we had a client as part of Qualitywise in automotive who ran monthly cross-functional reviews of process capability data on their top 10 special characteristics. So when issues arose, they used 8D thinking to drive sustainable fixes. And to add one further, I've seen some really good best practice in some Japanese OEMs where they have a policy where any special part where it affects safety or regulatory, if that part is dropped on the floor by the operator and hits the floor, it is instantly considered to be scrap. It's not worth reworking. You wouldn't put it back onto the vehicle. It's gone. There's no point of reintroducing that, because by the time you X-ray it, you check it, it's just not worth the risk, because you have to record that history. The traceability requirements are there as part of IETF. You have to say what happened to that part, and if it was repaired to an acceptable level. And at that stage, it's no longer as new. It becomes a warrantable item, which is different. And I've also worked in other OEMs, sports car manufacturers, where they dropped brake calipers, and at the time they thought it was worth X-raying. In the end, the decision had to be made that no, it's just not worth the risk, because it's on something of high performance and it needs to be controlled, removed, and eliminated. So in some cases, you have to cut your losses as a manufacturer, and it's not worth the risk, because if you sell that to a customer and that passes to the final person who buys the vehicle, and there's a crash and someone is injured, or there's, unfortunately there might be a death, you would be liable for that.
I'm happy that you said this, because I'm driving a Japanese car, and one of the trigger why I decided to buy this one was actually the safety. Okay, so let's maybe summarize, this is what we've said today. Definitely we hope that the main key takeaways for you in this episode are that you understand the 3 categories of special characteristics, and your team will also understand it. And you will communicate this in your organization. That not only the dimensional, which mostly I hear during even trainings on FME or control plan. No, we have 3 categories. Of course, I hope also that you understand the importance, how important special characteristics can be. No one would like to have this feeling that in your car you can't feel safe. And I hope you understand on how to designate special characteristics. I just briefly mentioned the process, even based on manual VDQMC about special characteristics. But also please remember, it's not like that only customer is responsible for designating special characteristics. If customer didn't give you special characteristics in the specifications on the drawing, you need to consider if it shouldn't be designated by you and your team, okay? And of course, remember about specific error-proofing solutions which may prevent you to designate special characteristics. And I hope you understood that special characteristics must be reflected in the documentation, like starting from flowchart, from FMEA to control plan, work instructions, control instructions, forms, and so on and so on. Everything which is co-working in this document ecosystem, I will call like that. Chris, how you would summarize this episode? Will you add something extra from this what I've said?
Yes, managing special characteristics effectively requires, number 1, risk-based selection to comply with the requirements of IETF. Number 2 would be some cross-functional alignment between the different departments and functions, practical controls which are reasonable based on the scale and size of your business, data-driven continuous improvement, something we really like here at Qualitywise is continuous improvement. Number 5, finally, would be, and most importantly, clear and concise communication between all members of the operation. And most importantly, number 5, which is clear communication. And if you're thinking, I'd love to get better at this, we can help. At qualitywise.pl, we offer tailored training on control plans, FMEA integration, and managing special characteristics with real-world examples from automotive and beyond.
And as a bonus for today's episode, we've prepared a free download, How to Manage Special Characteristics, a kind of practical guide, where you can find tips and examples how to control these special characteristics. Just visit qualitywise.pl to grab your copy.
Thanks for listening, and remember, smart management of special characteristics can drive both quality and sanity. Don't forget to subscribe specifically about quality for more actionable quality insights. Until next time.